Santos here, and in today's video we're going to be talking about a game from ArenaNet. Oh yes, today's that day, Guild Wars 2. Now Guild Wars 2 is still under the NDA unless you're a media outlet, and I currently am not media, so I am bound by the NDA restrictions. So I'm not going to be divulging any information if I was or wasn't in any of the prior closed beta tests. What I will say is I'm going to be discussing stuff that's readily available from the Guild Wars 2 website, as well as other media. If you want to see some videos on Guild Wars 2, you can search through YouTube by entering Guild Wars 2, and you'll see a lot of different videos from the likes of Total Biscuit or Yogscast. And they have a lot of walkthrough vids and their interpretation. What I'm going to be doing is discussing some of the professions while we look at some photos and some artwork, and listen to this awesome soundtrack, unofficial soundtrack I may add, from Guild Wars 2. The first class is the Ranger. The Ranger's pretty cool. They're pretty much like the Hunter class in World of Warcraft. Yes, I will be using other terms for other games. I'm the type of person that's just a gamer. I'm not a fanboy of one game over another. I still have an active Warcraft subscription. I have an active SWTOR subscription, and I play a bunch of other free-to-play games as well, so I am not a fanboy, I'm just a gamer. I like to play anything and everything. So if you hear me use one of those terms and you don't like it, I suggest you just look for another video to watch. Anyway, the Ranger, like I said, is just like the Hunter in WoW, with a few different twists and turns along the way. They still are the range class. They can summon pets, they drop traps just like WoW. One thing they do that the hunters in WoW do not do is they summon spirits. They have spirit skills where they can summon like nature spirits and stuff, like the sun spirit, for example, that deals additional fire damage to allied targets inside its influence and stuff. Their mechanics basically similar to the hunter, but the weapons that they use, let's take a look at those. Since Guild Wars 2 is heavily based on different weapon combinations. That's how you change your skills. For Rangers, their main hand, they can use a sword or an axe. Their offhand, they'll be able to use an axe, a dagger, a torch, or a warhorn. The two-handed weapon for them is the greatsword, the longbow, and the shortbow. They have a variety of pets that they can summon. There's a bunch of different types of pets as well. But they can only have 3 in their call thing at once, so you have to pick a good squad of 3 to have. But pretty much it's your ranged DPS dealer with helps from a bunch of pets. The next class we're going to talk about is the Elementalist. The Elementalist is not a new class to MMOs. Quite the contrary, there's a lot of clothy wearing magic dealers in a bunch of different MMOs with a bunch of different playstyles. The Elementalist is pretty cool because it uses 4 different elements: fire, air, earth, and water, and it deals damage in a variety of different ways. The difference with them is that they're not just casting like fireballs or frost bolts or anything like that. Their fire, air, earth, and water elements that they use are all based on the weapons they're wielding. So if you have a staff where you might be doing a little bit more AoE fire or AoE air attacks or whatever, if you change to a sword in your main hand, those abilities will change. But depending on the element you're using currently, the skill on that one weapon will change. So you have to figure out which one you want to use. The one major difference from Elementalists in this game compared to other mages or damage dealers is that their water element can act as a healer. Even though there's no healing like there's no main spec healer in this game since there's really no trinity. If you use water and you use let's say a staff and you drop an AoE circle on the ground, well, any enemies that are in that circle are going to take damage, but at the same time, any of your allies that are in that circle will also gain health. So the Elementalist is kind of a little multitasker here with a bunch of variety. So it's going to be a pretty fun class to play. Alright, next let's move on to the Thief. This is one of those classes that is really roguelike. They are the melee guy that likes to attack from the shadows, per se. So it's pretty similar to a rogue or other stealthy type characters in other MMOs. This is one of the classes that Toto Biscuit really likes, and he has a few videos on the gameplay of the Thief. So if you're interested in watching, I suggest you go to his channel and look for Thief gameplay. But the Thief is pretty cool. He's got a couple neat abilities. Well, he's a thief, one thing, so he's got an ability called Steal that's really neat. The Steal ability works just like it sounds. You basically shadow step to your opponent and you can steal an active ability off of them. And then that ability stays with you until you decide to use it by using your steal option again. So it's pretty neat the way it works. The stealthiness, it's not like you can stay in stealth a whole lot of time, but you only stay in stealth for so much time before you unstealth. But it's a pretty cool class. There's a lot of things you can do with the rogue. He's really varied in all the stuff he can do, but when it comes to weapons, he doesn't have a big selection. He probably uses the least amount of weapons next to the engineer. We'll talk about the Engie later. For weapons, his main hand, he can use a sword, a dagger, and a pistol, which is really cool, pistols. And then offhand is dagger and pistol. Again, really cool, because you could dual wield pistols as a rogue. Really fun. And for two-hand, he can use a short bow, which would be like your, for your times that you can't really get into melee, you'd use the short bow and do some damage. The difference with this class, the Thief class, is an ability that he has that's basically called dual skills. For most classes, your main hand weapon gives you your first 3 abilities on your hotbar 1, 2, 3, and then your offhand gives 4 and 5. Well, for the rogue, or for the Thief, I should say, depending on the combo of weapons you're using, main hand, offhand, is what your 3rd ability is going to be. So it's going to be pretty cool figuring out which one's the best. Alright, now let's discuss a little bit about the Warrior. The Warrior is your heavy armor wearing, in your face, mace to face, sword to face, anything to face character. He basically runs in with reckless abandon and just rips shit apart. And that's basically what the Warrior is in this game. He uses a similar mechanic to a lot of other games, Rage or whatever you want to call it, Energy, like in Terra Online, but this Warrior is pretty different in the fact that the skills he uses are really cool, and since they change with the weapons you use, it's going to be pretty hard to master. Like using a sword might make your Warrior a little bit more mobile, but where using an axe you might do like a bunch of damage, where using a mace you might be able to keep your opponent stunned for a good bit of time. And then using like a greatsword will just like devastate anything, but your attacks might be a lot slower. But the Warrior pretty much plays like every other Warrior. He uses different stances. Like you have your Berserker stance and stuff, and everyone has their own original thing to it that you can use in game. You just gotta figure out. One of the cool things about the Warrior is he has chains, and by chains I mean like in option 1 where you have your auto attack. It depends on which weapon you're using for which auto attack you get. If you hit it once, it'll be 1 attack, but then if you hit the same button again, it'll change to a different attack, and then it'll chain to a 3rd attack, which is pretty cool that he can do that. He uses shouts like most other Warrior classes. He's got charges and stuff like that. For his weapons, he can use main hand sword, axe, mace. Offhand shield, warhorn, sword, axe, mace. And two-handed weapons, he can use greatsword, hammer, longbow, and rifle. Like I said, he does use adrenaline, which is kind of like a rage, but he also has some burst skills that are going to be pretty fun trying to figure out when to use them for optimal damage. Now moving on to the Guardian. The Guardian is probably as close a class as you're going to get to a tank in this game. Like I did say, there is no Trinity, so you don't have your tank, DPS, and heal. You're not always going to be looking for a group tank, looking for a group healer. Everybody comes with a heal. Some classes can help heal others with some of their skills, but even then they're not considered a main healer because they don't have enough to just basically heal for the whole fight. Everybody that plays this game is going to have to learn how to be multi-talented and not only do some damage, you're going to have to learn when to use your heal to bring yourself back up, when to use your abilities that can heal other people as well as deal damage and stuff like that. It's going to be fun figuring it all out, but the Guardian, I guess, can be seen as a paladin of sorts. I'm not sure if that's 100% accurate because there is some abilities that he does that isn't paladin-like, but he has some cool things. Like, the Guardian can summon some spirit weapons to help fight at your side, which is pretty cool. He uses symbols. Basically, he's putting like symbols in the ground that inflicts damage on enemies. He also can put wards in the ground that can like debuff enemies. So that's pretty cool. And he uses an Aegis. By Aegis, I mean there's like these things he does that are called virtues, and you can have one active on you. And there's three. There's Justice, there's Courage, and Resolve. The Courage one will grant a shield every 30 seconds that'll block the next attack. And then he can unleash the virtues and give these virtues to his companions, but then he loses it himself. It's a pretty cool class. For main hand, the Guardian can use Mace, Scepter, Sword. Offhand, it's Focus, Shield, Torch. And the two-handed weapon is Greatsword, Hammer, and Staff. This is going to be one of those classes that's going to be running in and trying to get the attention of the bosses because they're a beefier class as far as armor, but it's going to be fun to play. Next we have the Necromancer. The Necromancer is one of these classes that's always fun to play. I remember Necromancer from Guild Wars 1, summoning the undead minions. I believe EverQuest also had a Necromancer as well. And this class is pretty unique. I want to say it's kind of like a Warlock, but it really isn't. For a Necromancer, you have a variety of undead pets that you can summon. But you can only, it's not like WoW where you can only summon one at a time. You can have like hordes of minions fighting at your side, and which makes for a pretty cool battle because you have this one guy with a bunch of undead running you down. You're not gonna wanna stay and fight. But the Necromancer has some pretty neat abilities. One is a well. It's basically a spell that he casts that makes an area of effect around him that can deal damage to foes or heal allies, which is pretty cool. The minions, like I said, he summons. There's a bunch of minions he can summon. One thing with the minions, he can destroy his own minions and get a buff from them, which is pretty cool. The Necromancer also has an ability called Marks. It's basically targeting the ground with some damage. Now, the one thing to note about this is in Guild Wars, you're going to be able to combo attacks with your allies. So if I have me and a hunter and a ranger in a group, I can put down a death field of poison, and if the hunter shoots his arrows through it, he can combo my attack, and now his arrow become poisoned arrows. So even if the enemy doesn't run into my poison, they'll still get it by him shooting on it. And of course, the Necromancer has a fear ability. All clothies that are undeadish types have to have a fear. For weapons, main hand he can use an axe, dagger, scepter. Offhand, dagger, focus, warhorn. And for two-handed, he can use a staff. Like I said, the Necromancer has a bunch of abilities he can use. One is like a life force that leeches health. It's pretty cool. And Death Shroud is another. He basically turns into a shadow and deals AoE damage. Pretty cool. The next class we're going to talk about is the Mesmer. This is one of those classes that falls borderline fun, but can be like really hard to master. The Mesmer it's like a mage, I guess. It's a magician of sorts, except he can do some pretty intense melee damage and has the mobility that's like just ungodly. The Mesmer can make like mirror images of himself, which are called illusions. There's two types of images he can make. Clones that look exactly like him. If you look at some of these concept art or screenshots, you'll see what I'm talking about. And the clones have the same name, same everything. So in PvP, you won't know which target is the real one. And then he can also make phantasms. Phantasms are illusions that don't look... They look like the caster, but look here, like... You see how they're like shadows of the caster? Those would be phantasms in this picture. The Mesmer is like so mobile. It's got a bunch of abilities that you can put like a thing on the ground that if your allies or yourself run through it, you get a speed boost. Or you can put a wall on the ground where enemies can't pass and get to you. It's pretty cool. He uses a couple weapons. For main hand, the Mesmer uses sword, scepter. For the offhand, the Mesmer uses focus, pistol, sword, and torch. And as far as two-handed weapons go, the Mesmer uses staff and great sword. The only difference here is that the great sword, while looking badass, I might add, gives him some ranged abilities. Like with the great sword, I believe the auto attack is just a base regular ranged attack that he's just shooting off the tip of the great sword, which is pretty cool. The Mesmer is also like a debuff class. You can put a bunch of debuffs on your enemies to confuse them and stuff. So it's going to be a lot of work to figure out how to play one with all the abilities, but it looks like a fun class to play. And our last profession, the engineer. This is my favorite profession so far. It's the one that I'm going to start with when I start playing Guild Wars 2. I am an altaholic and I like to level alt, so I will probably get one of each to max level, but the first one I'm going to be playing is an engineer. Why do I like the engineer so much? Just because it's got so much versatility. While they can be looked at as a jack of all trades but the master of none, I think that a player playing an engineer very well is going to be just so badass. Let me explain to you what I mean when I say jack of all trades. Where some characters are better suited for DPS, and then other characters in other MMOs are better suited for healing. And then some classes, like let's say the Druid, were capable of doing all three. The Engineer is capable of all three. He's a little bit beefier than most other classes, and he also can equip himself a shield and an offhand. But he also can put down turrets that heal himself. He has himself a healing belt, and he can put down some pretty good DPS as well. Let's talk about the weapons. Like I said before, he's probably got the lowest variety when it comes to weapon. For main hand, he can only equip a pistol. Offhand, he can only equip pistols and shield. Two-handed weapons, it's only a rifle. So he doesn't have a big variety, but other classes can use two weapon loadouts and then switch between. For the engineer, his mechanic is he has a bunch of backpack kits and weapon kits that he can switch to, and it'll change his 1 through 5 and give him different abilities. Let's take a look at the kits. He's got, for backpack kits, he's got a toolkit, he's got a grenade kit, a bomb kit, a mine kit, and a med kit. And for weapon kits, he's got flamethrower and elixir gun. The elixir gun's pretty cool. The flamethrower is pretty badass, but the elixir gun's pretty cool because it gives you a variety of different attacks. For turrets, he can put down a few turrets in the ground too that make him pretty versatile. He can put down a rifle turret, a thumper turret, a net turret, a flame turret, and a healing turret. I want to say it's the toolkit. The toolkit gives him a little bit variety with the turrets because you can activate the turret's abilities to do what you want, or like with the toolkit wearing like a bomb or something, you'll be able to explode mines or throw grenade clusters or whatever. So it's pretty versatile. Alright, my final thoughts on this game. Pretty awesome. I believe that Guild Wars 2 is going to be a popular game for years to come. It's doing a lot of things right, in my opinion, that an MMO should do to attract the fans. One thing is they listen to the fans. A lot of things they're doing is going to attract the hardcores, the PvPers. It's also going to attract the people that don't have as much time, or the casual player. The fact that it's buy to play and there's no monthly sub, I think is going to bring a lot of people into the MMO genre that were scared or didn't want to spend money on a monthly fee before. So I think this has a high ceiling to just be an amazing game with an amazing fan base. Guild Wars 1 still going pretty strong, and that game was decent for its time. It was really good early on, but it just became just like any other MMO, and ArenaNet really listened to its fan base and in constructing this next MMO, and they continue to listen to its fan base, which is an awesome thing to do, because the fans are basically what's going to keep your company going. Just word of mouth alone is going to get this game some hype. And right now, people may say that it's overhyped. Very well, maybe. Is it going to kill any other game? Probably not. Especially since it's buy to play and you don't have to spend a sub fee. The majority of your player base that play other MMOs will still continue to pay a sub fee for another MMO while playing this game at the same time. The good thing about this game is that if you buy it and you get tired of it, you can take a break. You don't have to worry about not canceling or whatever, buying a game card later on, because you can just pick it up to play it whenever you want again. I've spent money on PS3 or Xbox 360 games that I've played for about a week. I might have beaten the game in about a week, and I've never touched again. And they're sitting in a bin in my room. So why wouldn't I take a chance on an MMO that can give you hundreds upon hundreds of hours of gameplay? I mean, just the PvP alone, the way the PvP is set up, the magnitude of the battles, it's going to be immense. I mean, there's 3 servers going up against each other in one realm, in world versus world versus world combat. The casuals and the hardcores will be able to coexist in these battlegrounds, helping recover resources, helping capture points. I mean, the scale of the battles are going to be so immense that we're going to be able to coexist and just enjoy the game together. So I think that's one thing that they're doing right, and I'm excited for it to start. Well, guys, my name is Santos. I'll leave you with a see ya.